What's happening, Ward Wrestling Live? We are back, and it's an amazing day today. I don't know how I pulled it off, but I have four badass females coming on in the sport of wrestling. Ward Wrestling Live, women on the mat. We're here, so it's gonna be a good time. So I've got the first one, who is a stud herself, Bior Guigni. I probably screwed that up. I'm sorry, but she was the first college female wrestler out of Connecticut. She was on the inaugural Menlo College team. She's the exec director of Boston Youth Wrestling. She's becoming the CEO and BTS of New England. There's a merger, and she'll talk about all that crap going on. And also, there's a big push for U.S. Greco called U.S. Grit. I just learned that about 5 minutes ago, and she's here to talk about it. So I'm very honored to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on. I know I have your partner in crime coming on at 1, so thank you both for signing up. It's an honor to have you on. So how are you? How you doing? And welcome.
It's awesome. I'm really appreciative for this opportunity. I think that anytime there is a chance for us to talk about women's wrestling and the different roles that we play in the sport, I am all in. So this is exciting for me, and I'm really happy to see that you have 4 women coming on in one day. That's like mind-blowing.
It blew my mind. But I have so it's basically the same time blocks, but I created like 2 different links. I don't know, just because I'm an idiot, I guess. But so when I look, and one link is blue dots, right, when they sign up on the calendar, and one link is pink dots, because that's how it works, right? Blue for men, pink for women. And all of a sudden I look and I got 4 pink dots. I'm like, God dang, all right. People are watching. And then I'm sure I'll get a lot of good feedback, because I saw where you and Boston Youth and all the programs that you're involved with, I saw where you shared it everywhere. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. I hope people see it. I hope it helps. I hope somebody says, wow, I want to wrestle because of it, or with the women's platform, I'm a girl out there, and wow, I can be a badass too. So take it and run with it. And thank you so much for coming on. You know, first of all, obviously we've had a little different things going on this summer, right? We had that little pandemic right now. So you're deep into Boston and New England wrestling. So and not just girls. I mean, you're everything. So how has Boston Youth Wrestling been affected throughout this summer, and what have you guys done to make sure that these kids are trying to stay out of depression, stay out of anxiety, stay out of suicidal tendencies? We're hearing a lot of this stuff from being trapped in your house. What have you guys done to kind of keep their mental state right?
Yeah, so it was, and anyone that I talk to doesn't really want to say that there are some positives that have come out of this coronavirus, because like obviously the sport was shut down, and we are going to be one of the last people to return to play, is what we're calling it, because of like the close contact nature of wrestling. And so as an organization, when we knew that like we had to close the doors immediately, we're like, hey, listen, like, how can we support our kids? And so the very next day we transitioned our office to be a meal site. So we started distributing meals immediately, and turned the rest of our office into a pantry. With that said, like we, had to cancel our spring season. We were going into the summer, and every summer we have what's called a coaches in training program. And that's where we hire kids to work for us, and, lead our summer programming, do a lot of social emotional learning, trauma-informed coaching. They have to go through all like the USA Wrestling certifications, just like any other coach. And these are 8th to 12th grade kids. So this year was very different, because we suddenly had to take on a very like teacher-esque role. We used Google Classroom and actually had the kids gardening. We had 2 garden plots that they did. They were they were able to grow their own food. And like my goal with that was, I didn't have a very healthy relationship with food. And I feel like we're now being more open and honest about the best ways to manage yourself and manage your goals through healthy eating. And so giving the kids a positive relationship with food was really important to us. So they crushed it. Like they grew all these things to make salsa. They created a recipe book. They created a gardening guide. And then they actually created a business out of it. So their business is called The Hungry Wrestler. And their goal was to give fresh foods to their community. And then whatever was left over at the end of the season, they were going to can it and jar it and then distribute that out as well. So that's something that I don't know if we would have gone that deep into these projects if we didn't have, if the opportunity wasn't presenting, we were just like, we focused on that direct service with other kids. So it was really neat. And, you're like, how do I keep someone engaged for 4 hours on Zoom? So we made sure to be competitive while we were on there. We would like bring up controversial topics like cat people versus dog people, pineapple on pizza, and like
Pineapple on pizza. Well, you got my attention.
I know. And the goal with that was with everything that's going on, we wanted to teach them, how do you have these conversations about topics you disagree on in a respectful way? Because sometimes the internet, or like the ability to just like anonymously post something online, I feel like it's taking that ability away to be responsible for your words and your actions.
Also to want to have your voice heard, because there's times that I read some of this racial stuff and what's going on in some of these posts. And I've learned, because I'm older now, like, all right, say it before you say it. So I'm like, say it in my head, and I say it in my head and I go, man, I really want to write that down, but I'm going to get hammered for that. Right. or I've got this feeling, and it's different than that feeling. And I think people have that issue. And I think it's more of a stress, anxiety issue that a lot of people have. So I think it's really good. Like a lot of kids today, they get offered debate and they get offered all this stuff at a lower age group, or a younger age group than what it was. Maybe it was around when I was younger, but I don't remember it, because maybe I thought it wasn't cool. But I think it's good because it teaches them to debate not without feeling. I think you always have feeling in your words, but a debate, you understand that it's a debate. Like, they don't hate me, but they've got to attack me, because that's the nature of, it's like wrestling, right? You and I fight, but that doesn't mean that afterwards we're going to keep fighting. Like, that's what made the sport so great. Like, we hug and we say, not me personally, but as the sport, you guys hug and kiss and high five and elbow and whatever. And I mean, I've seen kids where they just made each other bleed, and now they're sitting up in the stands eating their lunch together, So pretty awesome. I could see, that's awesome that you do that with the kids, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people want to focus on the negative that is going on through the process, and I mean, I think we all fall victim to it, right? Like, sure, as a parent, I'm like, oh man, I wish my son got to wrestle this summer. I wish we got another good off season in. I wish we were able to do this. And then my son's like, Dad, I'm fine. I've been working out. I'm good. I got to spend time. Like, he and his little brother became like really, really tight. He's like, I'm cool with it, right? And but as a parent, you're like, oh man, I feel bad for him, right? So many good things came from it. And I did want to ask you, because you guys being a youth movement that are really involved in, and for the most part, it's not for the millionaire's kid, right? It's for some kids that are struggling and need help and need food on the table during this process. So that's awesome what you did, man.
Yeah, and as a nation too, Boston Youth Wrestling, a lot of people don't know we're actually part of Beat the Streets. And so we're like one of the newer additions onto that. And we all came together as Beat the Streets and did the 1,000,000 Minutes Challenge. And that was 1,000,000 minutes of engagement. We weren't just going to say, hey, you're going to bust out like 1,000,000 push-ups, which I think those movements are really awesome as well. But we wanted to focus on that social emotional aspect of it. Like, we had athletes coming on and, US athletes coming on and talking directly to our kids and having really open conversations and really honest conversations, which we appreciated. And just having that access to these incredible, like, mentors and role models coming on and talking to our kids nationwide was such a beautiful thing to see from coast to coast. So the kids were really getting an opportunity to get to know each other through that, to get to know our organization a little bit more, like, above just getting on the mat and getting an opportunity to travel. So we hit that 1,000,000 minutes. We were so proud as an org. A lot of us are still continuing to, post those quotes or send books out to kids and have these like open circle conversations including like justice talks, which is super important right now. But it's just been a really beautiful thing to see. And I think that's something that we're seeing with the women's movement, we're seeing with men supporting women, and a lot of the sport just truly coming together during this time to continue to push forward and persevere. And that's what wrestlers are about. So it's kind of like our time to shine and take this opportunity to become even better than we were before we're able to get on the mat again.
Yeah, I think it's good because now you have kids that are going to want to give back to Beat the Streets. Now they're going to come out of college or they're going to come out of high school. You know, not for nothing. I mean, listen, the goal is to go to college and get your education and do the right things. But there's kids that I've spoke to that are involved in Beat the Streets New York City, and they got done with high school, and all they really wanted to do was give back to Beat the Streets in New York City. And that's what they did. They decided not to go off to college at the time. They weren't ready for it. And now you've got them in the room, helping these kids, teaching them, training them. And that gives them the will to say, okay, I want to go back to school now, because now Beat the Streets tells me I can be a teacher if I, whatever, and I can get a paying job instead of volunteering. And good stuff.
Yeah.
So I think you basically told us all about Boston Youth Wrestling there, right?
Yeah, and I'm proud of the kids that have decided like, hey, I'm not quite ready for college, because I will be 100% honest. My first year of college was a disaster. Like I was not ready for that level of responsibility, accountability. I was all the way across the country in California, and I was like, all this freedom, like what do I do with it? And so I just wasn't mature enough to handle that, and then having a collegiate athlete schedule, it was a tough learning experience for me, and something that like I regretted for a long time. And that's why I left the sport, because I was so embarrassed at my behavior with like all this new freedom. And so that's a big goal of ours. It's like, all right, we're going to help our kids make the right decisions for them and be proud of it, and know that like the door is always open for new opportunities, and that's okay.
Yeah, and you know how many kids you save just by getting to meet a USA wrestler? It sounds, I know as us, we're healthy, we're luckily we're in a situation where the refrigerator's full and things like that. But I've been involved with Make-A-Wish for several years, right? And obviously, I'm not trying to compare a terminally ill child with a wrestler, but they're both going through issues that could become terminal, right?
Yeah.
And when they get to meet their mentor, or they get to meet an idol, or they get to see an athlete as a young child, and that athlete says, hey, little Johnny, or hey, little Susie, you can do it, right? They're like, wow, I can get 6 more months out of that, or I can get through this problem, or I can get through this issue. And so even for the inner city kids that are getting to meet you and Jackie Davis and Catherine Shea, and people that are coming on the show, and people that are also your hey, look, there's whoever. It's a big deal. I mean, those kids, you just re-energized them for however long, because what are they going to do, right? They've been depressed. They've been sitting in their house. They're like, oh man, I've tried to work out this summer. I thought wrestling was going to happen. It still hasn't happened. My mom has let me out of the house. But then they just saw whoever, and they're like, and they run out and they throw a mat down and they wrestle. Maybe they get 2 weeks of wrestling, and just because they just met the superstar, right? And it gets their mind back again, and that's cool. Well, I know we just go down the rabbit hole here.
I mean, I'm equally starstruck, right? Like I went to like the women's national camp, and I just felt like such a creep, because I was like, oh my gosh, there's so and so. And like that's something that 10, 15, I don't want to age myself, like 20 years ago, I didn't see this many like amazing, incredible female wrestlers in one space, like working together. So I was geeking out so hard, like texting Jackie back home. I was like, oh my God, it's like, is Vicky Anthony going to show up? Or like, I can't believe I just saw. Like,
that happens to me right now. Like I get people, like I get you guys on, and I'm like, oh my God, who somebody messaged me that said they wanted to come on the show or something. And I was like, hold on, I need to run around my room and say, oh my God, and then come back to you and they put LOL. And I'm like, but that's how I feel. Like just when someone says yes, it's awesome. But obviously one of the things that are going on right now is the women's movement. I know that there's a lot of talk about better promotion and uh, just more inclusion in the sport. I mean, I was talking to some coaches. I think the inclusion that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been to some clubs, I've talked to club owners. Uh, in the club wrestling scene, it seems like women are just other wrestlers and they're welcome and they're there. For the most part, it's been accepted.
Yeah.
But I think the movement, the push is, if it's accepted everywhere else, why isn't it accepted in the States to be sanctioned as a sport? Is it accepted at a higher collegiate level? Is it accepted on a world? I think not so much on a world level, because you guys are competing. You go overseas, I'm told there's women, every ref is a woman most of the time, and you got a lot going on. But am I correct in saying that? Because I think the club coaches and the clubs, it's just another wrestler for the most part, right? I mean, I'm sure there's still some people out there that are just still in 1910, but it's more the movement to promote it in the high schools and the colleges on the pro level, not pro, but world level or whatever. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, I see what you're saying. I think that there's a lot of things happening simultaneously, right? I think that there's been a lot of growth over 20, 30, 40 years with more acceptance and having women step on the mat. I do think that they are pretty case by case. Like even here, most of the coaches that I work with are super accepting of having girls step on the mat, but like don't know what to do once they're there. They don't understand like, hey, she doesn't have to have a female partner, or there's a lot of like these little questions that we get asked as women in the sport here that I never would have thought that would have been an issue. I'd be like, oh, like, yeah, she can do that, or she can do that too, or yes, she can wrestle during her time of the month. Like it's okay. And
I had Wara Bonnie on, and she had some choice words for that off the air. But
that's like my number one question I get asked.
Yeah,
like,
on the air, she was very clean, no, I think you're right. I think I was speaking to someone. I said, I don't think that I think what you're saying is right, because if I talk to like a male coach, I don't think that their issue is having women on the team. There's so much of these movements going on right now that they're afraid that that movement is going to come to their room and the guy touched me, or the girl touched, or this touched, or that touched me. And instead of just saying, okay, well, the right thing to do is just to include them, and then we'll figure out the issues when they come. Does that make sense? Or am I wrong
no.
saying that?
I think I think you're on the right path, because every girl that's stepping into a wrestling room, like, there was this whole misconception that like, oh, we're here to meet boys. And it's like, you're going to meet them. They're all there. But like, that's the last thing on my mind as I'm trying to like fight out of a cradle, or like, like get off my back.
Like, he rubbed my leg the wrong way when he was trying to single leg me, right?
Yeah. And I think that it was something that only became uncomfortable when other people made it uncomfortable, because, we're here to learn, and we're here to get to the next level where we want to be. And a lot of times outside influence is really affecting what's happening on the mat. So I think that like, even with our kids this summer, as like parents and teachers and coaches, like we could have been, without thinking, putting our fears onto our kids, and like the kids are going to be okay. Like if we give them the tools and the outlets to be able to have conversations and to be able to grow and understand that like it's okay to have feelings and we can work through them, like they're going to be all right. But I feel like a lot of what happens in the sport is people are putting like their thoughts and opinions into it and saying that we're considering the athletes or we're considering the girls. But there were so many people that like, quote unquote, went to bat for me. And I was like, I never wanted that, or I never said that. I just wanted to show up, get the job done, move forward. At the time, I didn't know there was collegiate opportunities. So like high school wrestling was it for me. I was like, yeah, this is going to be like my time. And then that was it. Like I was just trying to make it through those 4 years. So I think that was the biggest thing. I was always surprised when people were having conversations, especially men, about me without me or my mom being included in them, And I
Yeah,
feel
well,
like
I think the new wave of girls that are coming up, I've heard are unbelievable, and we're gonna see just some awesome women coming into the sport. But I had Mindset Mike on, and he mentioned that in the first 11 years of life, a kid is influenced the most, right? So now, if girls and boys are in the clubs at a younger age together, wrestling together, don't they grow up with a different mindset than, ooh, I'm not going to touch the girl, or ooh, there's a girl on the mat, or the girls saying, ooh, that's a boy, oh my God, right? Like, this is real stuff that goes on, right? So
yeah,
if you have them, if you have boys and girls together at a younger age and they grow up together wrestling, isn't there more of a sense of, yeah, hey guys, just another wrestler, dude, just come on, let's go. She doesn't
yeah.
care that she doesn't care that you guys have different parts. That doesn't matter, right? Like, just wrestle, right?
Yeah,
uh,
just wrestle. And if we teach equality at a younger age, right, that's going to roll over to other aspects of their life. When they're, thinking of injustices, they're going to remember like, oh, wait, like this is my equal, and, take that forward. So especially, I don't understand. And this always blows my mind. Like, parents who don't want their kids, especially like at the youth level, we're talking like K-5. They're like, oh, I don't want my kid to wrestle a girl, or I don't want my girl to wrestle a boy. I'm like, essentially, they're going through, their strength levels are pretty even during that age group. Like, their abilities are pretty even during that age group. Like, this is the best time for them to be wrestling each other, and learning and growing together. So that's a big part of what our goal is in Boston Wrestling. It's just teaching that, like, or Beat the Streets in general, because there's now a whole generation of wrestlers who have had female coaches and have had girls on their on their team and on their mats, and they don't understand when people are looking in and like making comments, or it's like, why does that person think you're my mom? Like, you're my coach. And so that was pretty awesome to see that they're just like kind of on the flip side of it now, where they're like, why is my coach being treated differently? Or why is my teammate being treated differently? Or why isn't the girls' locker room open,
well, I think also, from what I hear, uh, like from the girls I've had on with Emma and Skylar and all the Lyles and all the cool women, girls and stuff, the stuff that hurts is not their friend, on the mat. Boys and girls are going to be like, nanny nanny boo boo, you're a girl, I'm tag your whatever, the bullshit that goes on with kids, but that's just making fun of each other and then it's over with. It's the stuff they hear from other coaches, and they hear from the stands, and they hear from people that they're supposed to be looking up to. That's where the pain comes into. And then I don't get it. We have this whole thing about gender equality, like this whole push right now of gender equality, and let's get real. I mean, there's parents out there like, no, you're a boy, you're supposed to be the girl. You're a girl, but yet at a level, at some point, there's a level where they're saying, no, my boy has to be with a boy, or my girl has to be with a girl. But then so your mind is totally fucked up, or sorry, totally screwed up, right? Because on one side you're saying, and what are people going to say? Oh, that's sexually, Dan. That's not wrestling. Well, you're essentially, what are you saying? They can be with a girl there, but they can't wrestle with. I mean,
Yeah. And you know what? If you don't want your kid to wrestle someone from the opposite sex, then make more opportunities for girls to have their own pathway. Like, be part of creating those chances versus like limiting them, because then it's not going to change. Then we're always going to have, like, this is why sanctioning at each state is huge, because otherwise, like, we're always going to have to go into this like co-ed championship series or co-ed, tournaments and things like that. And that's something that, if you truly don't want your kid to have to wrestle someone from the opposite sex, then like join the movement, help out, like push these things forward, and
and I
make
hope
it.
that came out I hope that came out the right way. I'm not saying like, I understand the difference between the two,
Yeah.
but think about what you're doing as a parent.
Yeah.
At a young age, you're teaching him or her that it's not okay what are they going to think when they get older?
Yeah. A lot of the
But when
first,
they're
like,
hiring now, when they're in a business position to hire, are they only going to hire men now? Or is she
yeah,
only going to hire women now? Are they going to get equal chances, opportunities for each side? Look, let's be honest. There's men that are against women. There's women that are against men. It happens both sides, but it shouldn't. And
yeah,
the equal opportunity. I mean, we're way past like, and I think the women too need an opportunity to promote themselves so that people can start to fall in love with that side of the sport. And then the women have the leverage to say, hey, these different, now we can go to these different high level places and say, hey, promote us, pay us, market us. You guys are, women are asking for that. You guys are saying, well, you've got to become somebody or whatever, right? Okay, well then promote us. Put us on the cards, put us in the competition so that people get to know us, to where on the other end now there's some of our girls that can say, hey, we've proven ourselves, we're badasses, people want to see us. Just like the UFC, now you see a couple of girls are on the cards now all the time and people want to see those girls and they're welcomed. They need to get to that level so that now, because you can't tell if a girl comes and asks for money and you say, well, who are you? Well, yeah, who am I? Because you're not making me somebody, right? Make
yeah,
me somebody, put me in the front of the line sometimes, and then people are going to know who I am. You know, they know who Helen is now, right? Because she won at the highest level, but it took that to make her, right? I mean, if you're in
yeah.
a sport, you know who she is, right? If you're in a sport, if you're a fan, but for the most part, the world now knows who she is, right? Because she won on a level where all eyes were on her.
Yeah, and like Helen was Helen before that medal, and so she was this incredible human that, you could have thrown on one of those cards, and now people would have been like, "Oh, I remember when I saw her win," and like those opportunities aren't being given at the same level, and like I don't want to be like, "Oh, I understand why," but like that mentality needs to change across the sport, and I think that with Wrestle Like a Girl, with how she wrestles, with all these incredible women, coaching and beyond, it's definitely getting that movement happening. It's just keeping that momentum going and getting a lot of supporters. So I do see now that there's more push for like equity, and not only for women but racially as well. And those two things have been fighting the same fight for a long time. And it's great to see like people joining forces to move things forward, women using their platform not only to talk about being a woman but being a woman of color. And so I'm just really proud of everything that's been happening in the last few years, and I'm glad to be back with the sport because, like I said, I left for a really long time, and when I came back, I was like, wow, like there's so many great things happening, and I definitely want to be a part of this. And so I shift careers to join Boston Wrestling and Beat the Streets, and took like a little bit of an alternative path. Like you said, I wasn't like a national champ. I wasn't on the U.S. women's team, but I came back and wanted to give back to our kids, teach them about women in the sport, how we coach, how we wrestle, and then also continue to move forward and create opportunities for all kids. Because with Beat the Streets, we are working in urban communities, and those opportunities aren't really there. Like when we started Boston Wrestling, we're like, we're going to partner with BU Wrestling. It's going to be awesome. Those guys are going to come down and coach our kids. And they're like, guess what? We're canceling BU Wrestling. And you're like, oh, okay. So then, fortunate for us, Harvard's right across the river, and they've been an amazing, amazing partner for us. But not all our kids see themselves going to Harvard, right? There's like, I think 1% of Boston kids would get into
Well,
it.
because they don't, because their mindset is, I can't make it, right? But if you put them in the room with those Harvard coaches at a young age, if
Yeah.
you put them around kids that are at that high level, then what happens? They want to become those kids and they understand the work that takes place. And then they start to believe, right? Like I had a coach on yesterday that said, my kids always end up at the Brandon room and Brandon just kicks our ass because mentally they're like, Brandon is a beast. But if we start to train together and we start to work together in the off season with those kids, then they start to become friends, and there's more of a, wow, I can be as good as that guy or that girl. And it's pretty cool to see. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to, I wonder, I mean, you're at a level where you have influence over wrestling, right? And it's great to see. Bill Crum, told you, knew he was going to come on.
I
As the
felt.
founder of Beat the Streets, it really makes me feel great to see the movement expand to so many other cities. They're doing great work in Boston.
Thank you, Bill. We're super proud to be part of that Beat the Streets family. We are. We really are.
But you know what? It's important that wrestling was your avenue to be where you are today. You're a better adult. You're a better woman. You're a better person. You're whatever. I don't know if you're a mom yet. If not, you're going to be a great mom, right? So
I feel like I have 600 kids. So like,
yeah, and you know, it's funny. I was talking to a coach because I talked to a few of those, you know, and he said, look, if I'm coaching my women and I'm telling them, hey, you need to be great to be famous, or you're going to make $1 million, then I'm not doing them justice. I need to tell them that this sport, if you're great, you're going to be a better person and a better human and a better mother and a better parent and a better whatever. And guess what might come from that, right? You may end up on a world stage. You may end up on a UFC mat. You may end up being great in the fight game. But the most important thing is I want them to know that this is going to get you to college. This is going to get you to the business world. This is going to get you to where you're giving back as a good human in our society. And I think that's important for girls and boys to hear. Like, if the purpose is strong, the money will come, and the life quality will come, and the life experience will come. But if the purpose is wrong, then I feel like eventually you're going to fail. If that,
yeah.
if
Yeah.
that,
And I didn't know what my story was going to be with wrestling. And I honestly thought that my story was done when I didn't think that I was able to win anymore, you know? And so when I came back, I had no idea what my value would be to this sport. And so I started just with, they're like, hey, we got funding for a girls program. Do you want to do that? And I was like, sure, absolutely. I'll be the girls head coach. And I was like, who's your co-ed head coach? And they're like, oh, we don't have one. I was like, I can do that too. And then it just kind of kept like, oh, who's doing this? I can do that. And I kept taking on more and more responsibilities because I wanted to see the sport be successful as a whole. And I think my name being ambiguous was helpful in some of these because some people just didn't know who's Bior. So I'd show up to a meeting and they're like, oh, it's a girl, you know, and then they'd be like, oh, great, it's a girl.
you have one of those names that's like Madonna. Now you say Bior and people know who she is, right?
I kid you not. I think I finally got like onto the board for like Massachusetts wrestling. So I have like multiple roles. And I think I showed up to the first board meeting and they were like, huh, that is not what we were expecting. And I was like, yes. So I've been really fortunate, especially in New England, where they have been really open and accepting. And, you know, I'm glad to be back in like my home region and giving back. And I had a pretty quick move from being like Boston Youth Wrestling to also being part of the Massachusetts Wrestling Association, then being like president of that, then the USA Wrestling chairperson, then being on like the Safe Sport Committee and, you know, US Grit, working through that. So there's a lot of like pathways that I never would have thought of exploring. And lucky for us.
And if you don't know, now within minutes, she's going to be the CEO of entire BTS New England. So
yeah,
she is definitely somebody in our sport. So
yeah.
Don't know, she's doing big things, and it's awesome. You know, and that leads me into a big question that you wanted to talk about: the alternate routes for women to be in the sport and to stay in the sport and to become leaders in the sport. You're doing it, right? Jackie Davis is doing it. A lot of these girls that I meet are doing it. And I mean, I have a lady coming on later that is a ref for 12 years. She's got 7 kids. I think 6 of them are great wrestlers, but she was able to give back to the sport and lead in a sport in a different route. She took a different way, right?
Yeah.
So man, talk about that, please.
Oh man, that was something that like I think when I first started this journey, I felt like I was back in high school, you know, like walking into the room and being the only girl again. But then I remember, like, you know what, when I started, there was like one girl on that team. And then when I left, there was 5 girls. And then looking back at my high school, they had a girls to coach and 12 girls on their team. So like, if I have to say to myself, if not me, who? Like, let's start this now. And so any opportunity that there was to lead within the sport, I was like, I'm going to shoot my shot. Let's see what happens. And let's see if they're like, no, forget it. Or yeah, let's hear more about this person and what they're doing. So I wanted to work really hard to be an expert at youth development and giving back that way, and kind of taking these different or like, mindset, and how to take all these different skills and utilize them to really give back to the wrestling community. So it started with like creating programming for Boston Wrestling. And then from there, I got into some really cool programs within like the city, and like to continue my education with like nonprofit work and leadership. And then that opened up so many more doors within the community, because I now had the skill set that a lot of people didn't have yet, or like were still maybe working through their professional career and weren't able to commit those skill sets full time to wrestling. So that allowed me to, lead locally, lead at a state level, lead regionally, and then now do some work with USA Wrestling, which to me is incredible to be a part of that many different levels of the sport, and then take all that knowledge and like give it to a kid, or give it to another girl, and be like, all right, these are the great ways that you can continue to grow. And so, like you said, there's coaching, there's program development, there is, Emma Randall, she's incredible. She's has a lot of great like articles, ideas, and programs that she creates for Beat the Streets New York. And it's all about just developing the person. And to see women be referees, I think that's like, I love watching women refs. I'm like, you get it, girl, and women CEOs. So like, Wrestle Like a Girl is a perfect example. It's a female-led organization, and seeing female board members. So, I mean, if anything has the word wrestling attached to it, like we are there, like we're able to contribute at every single level. So I think that's exciting. And I think that when we give the spotlight more to women, that women like to build and move forward together. So everything we do is not only for girls, but we want to do it for the whole sport. And the more levels you include us in that, the more we're going to want to like give back and push things forward for everybody.
But I think that how many people at the grassroots of wrestling would be surprised if they knew how many women are behind the scenes that make wrestling run as a whole. I mean, making decisions, writing different articles, creating tournaments. I think Jackie Davis started the Gotham City Girls Tournament, which is the largest international tournament in our country. But there's a lot of girls behind the scenes on the men's side and the boys' side. And
yeah,
it's,
yeah. There's a lot of women state leaders and like, tournament directors and
the young lady that I have coming on, she's a senior down at Hialeah, Miami Lakes. And her name is Jasmine Godinez. And she's down in Hialeah, Miami Lakes. And I was reading an article. So this year she was the only girl to make the boys state tournament. But they asked her in this article, and I'm going to bring it up to her. They asked her, what do you tell the younger girls that are coming up? And she said, I tell them, never classify yourself as a girl wrestler. If you're a wrestler, you're a wrestler. Yeah. And pretty in those words, it's pretty powerful, right?
I mean, I love that, right? Like I would say there's like two school of thoughts there. There's like, absolutely, we're a wrestler, we're part of this community, this is who we are. But then, like you were saying, taking it back to the beginning of our conversation, that there was like this stigma about like wrestling a girl, like, oh, you have to wrestle her, like I don't want to wrestle her. And so like we, like, I don't know if you can see our shirt, but like we took that term and we owned it. We're like, yeah, wrestle her, like you're gonna have to wrestle us. We are gonna wrestle like girls, like we are female wrestlers, but we're also a wrestler and part of this community. So like all ties in together, and we're part of this family. And we just, all we're asking is, hey, like, let us be a part of your family, and let's move forward together. Let's have like the best possible tournaments that we can have and the best possible people that we can bring into the sport, and like let's move it forward at every single level. And like I'm not waiting for doors to be open. Like I'll climb through a window, I'll kick a door in. Like I'm gonna get in there in any way that I can. And I know that like that's the mentality we had to have as girls in this sport and as women that want to give back. Is like opportunities are just like being handed to us. We're still very much like pushing for them.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't think that the women's voice is coming from a place of saying, "Hey, nobody welcomes us." I think we're just hearing the voice louder and more right now because we're in a situation and a platform where you're able to take advantage of being heard. But I think that you guys are very loud at saying, "Hey, thank you to the people who do welcome ladies and do help and do welcome women and do have women's teams out there and women's clubs um, and are helping women." And I think you guys know that there are a lot of good people out there. And I don't think that's what you guys are saying. You're just saying, "Hey, there's still some steps that need to be done."
Yeah, absolutely. And we couldn't have done it if it wasn't for, our male counterparts taking that chance or opening that opportunity to begin with, right? And a lot of it, I think, we're like, we always joke like, all these coaches must have had daughters instead of sons. So I'm gonna make a wrestler regardless,
Yeah, because they like us.
So I'm like, yes, keep having daughters. So I do think that the more, and I'll keep saying this, the more we work together, the better the entire sport is going to be. And I am really grateful because, whether they knew I was a girl or not, when I was in those rooms, like they started, listening and asking my opinion. And it wasn't just about like, oh, what do you think we should do as a girl? And I was like, well, what about this for like girls? And what about this for our whole sport? And then I was like, oh, okay, great, interesting. And so even like being part of a Greco movement, right? Like there isn't a lot of opportunities for girls to do Greco. And that's been a really amazing experience with USA Wrestling, with Gary Mayev and the whole team of this US Grit movement, to just have your voice be heard and respected, regardless of having like any sort of accolades in the sport of Greco.
That's all. Yeah. And well, I had other questions, but I think you touched on them. I mean, we obviously have heard what wrestling has meant to you because it's changed your life, right? And you mentioned where it's taken you and where you got because of it, and now you're giving back. One thing I was going to ask: boys and girls wrestling in New England, how tough is it? How much has it grown? We have there's the Sentis brothers. So Scotty is down at Campbell, and then his brother took over a school just north of you guys, I think, and it was in shambles, and he's turned it around to where they won I think they won the state championship this year. He made this cool like old Detroit style championship shirt, and he says that it's really coming along up there. How since you've been there, how much growth? I mean, you grew up in New England, so.
Oh man, I mean, like, look out, world! Like New England is making some movement. There's a lot of people coming together. There's a lot of incredible coaches here. The athletes are coming a long way, and it's like, we've always kind of been like these underdogs where people are like, oh, what's happening in New England? But every single state is working on something really cool, and we're really pushing all styles here. And so I know last year was our first year where we're like, all right, we're going to have, our traditional freestyle season. We're going to push through and get more involved with the Olympic season with freestyle and Greco. And like, we brought a huge team to Fargo, and it was like our mass team. And then we also brought a New England like combined girls team. That was for girls who either their state wasn't sending someone, or like they had traditionally gotten waivers to wrestle for another state. And Jackie was big in making this happen, allowing girls to wrestle for their own state, but travel together as like a unified team. So that way they didn't feel like they were alone, or like they were like the one girl coming out of like this particular state. So that was really amazing to see. And I'm really proud of everyone that's come together to make this happen, from, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. Vermont was like a huge find. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many cool things happening in Vermont. Because I'd be like, what's going on in Vermont? Like, I have no idea. And like now, the more you have these conversations, the more people are starting to come together. And I feel that
the women coming out of Maine, I've heard, are pretty.
Oh, and all these girls are so awesome. I'm so excited. Like, and even now seeing, a lot of things that I think sometimes it's hard to find like what's the right pathway to like get, like how do you go to the right tournaments? How do you get yourself out there? Like I didn't really know a lot about that until Jackie came on, and she had already been doing a lot of the national like circuit, and so it was like, oh, okay, like I never would have known that like these 3 tournaments are like the ones we should be going to, and making those priorities. Like now you're seeing a lot more New England girls being featured on like the national rankings and things like that. And that was awesome. And I think that the boys here, co-ed absolutely, but the boys here are like really getting out there more. Like they were good wrestlers, but just maybe not like going out as much as we should have been, or like pushing the different styles. But I am really excited to see the growth of all of our wrestlers here in New England. And I definitely think that like I said, look out world. Like
yeah, and I mean, Boston is one of those towns known for creating tough kids, right? So it's like Philly, right? It's the fighting. Yeah. So it's cool to see him come on. Well, I got my 10 questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Franklin Park Zoo or New England Aquarium?
Oof. Oh man, that's tough. Okay. New England Aquarium.
The lobster roll or the lobster mac and cheese?
Oh, lobster mac and cheese. Connecticut makes the best lobster roll. I'm going to say that right here, right now.
Oh, sorry, Boston. Get the wharf.
Get it, CT.
Quincy Market or Copley Square?
Oh man, I would say Quincy Market.
I love
better drinking.
I love Faneuil Hall. We stayed at the Marriott right across the street, so it was great. I could just like walk right across the street and go into Faneuil Hall. Great views
from there.
Boston cream pie or cannolis?
Ooh, you can't ask me that.
I went to, there's like you know where Little Italy is, right? So we would walk down to Little Italy, and there was these 2 like famous bake shops, and we would go and get those little rainbow cookies with like the chocolate on top.
All right, I'm gonna go with a Boston cream pie cannoli.
Ooh, I never heard of that. Girl, she's got woo-hoo!
Forgot the fat kid in me.
Look, I got man boobs. Little Italy or Chinatown?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I am gonna go with Chinatown.
Nice. All right, Boston baked beans or New England clam chowder?
Chowder.
The Boston Common or the Boston Harbor?
Harbor for sure.
South Boston or the North End?
Oh, all right, since I picked Chinatown, I'm definitely going with the North End because I love me some Italian food.
There's a pizza place down there. We had to stand in line on the corner to go in there, and it's the first pizza place in New England, it claims to be, which I'm sure I guess. But they had like this garlic thing that they made that they put on the table.
Oh.
Pizza was amazing, but when my wife turned around, I was drinking it. She's like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, that shit is good. I'll make that at home.
Take it to go.
It's like when you get done with one of those good meals, you're licking the plate, and she's like, "Hey, you can't lick the plate in public." I'm like, "It's so good. I want it all. Can I use my fingers?"
No rules. Just have at it.
Yeah. Crispy cod or fried clam strips?
Oh, crispy cod.
And then last but not least, are you a Sox girl or a Celtic?
Okay, so fun fact, when you're from Connecticut, you can like choose which side you want to go to.
Oh, you're going Yankees.
So I'm the weirdest split. I am a Yankees, Giants, Celtics, Bruins. So I'm like
Bruins.
Bruins. Yeah. I would say though, Fenway is an amazing ballpark. So like whether you're a Yankee fan or not, like you have to give respect to the team in the ballpark, and they do a lot of awesome things for the community. And even though I'm a Giants girl, like the Patriots have been really good to us in wrestling. So I really appreciate them and the Patriots Foundation.
I may age myself, but when I was rooting for the Bruins, they had Andy Moog and Ray Bork and Cam Neely.
Oh, I lost you.
Hey, you there? Can you see me?
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Are we there?
Oh.
Right here. I see you.
Oh, there you are. Yay.
Hey. Yeah, so they had, back when I was rooting, they had Andy Moog and Ray Bork and Cam Neely and all those guys. Save Andy Moog! I remember hearing it on the radio all the time. And it was cool. I was maybe 12 years old. And this group of kids, we were taken to a Fenway Park to watch a game. And we were sitting up at the stands behind home plate. And I saw Cam Neely came walking by. And because I was 12, to this day, I still believe he was the biggest man I've ever seen in my life. Shirt open. He was holding beers, and it looked like he just had like 3 shot glasses in each hand. And they were full 12-ounce, 16-ounce beers. And that was pretty cool. He and Ray Borg were down there. He signed the back of my my Fenway Park ticket. So there's
crazy how little they look, right? Like on TV or on the field, and then you get up there, you're like, oh my god. I mean, so they're like
that's hey, boys and girls, I have the ticket in this thing called a photo album. I don't know if they still exist out there. There's these books, and they have pages in them, and you put the photos between the plastic.
You got to go get your photo printed.
Yes. And I had to put it inside this thing. I don't, it's not like a folder on my phone. I have my pictures in a book. Oh, here we go. So Matt Daney says, huge impact on mass wrestling from Bior. She has been an honor to work with. And then he says, don't hang up yet. Ask her about her favorite Fargo story.
Oh man, which one? There's so many.
I don't know. It just says, need to ask Bior her favorite Fargo story.
Okay, I'm gonna. Fargo was like a love-hate for me because like it was so cool to be able to go for the first time, and there was a ton of bonding that happens not only for the kids but also for the coaches. But it was like really hot in Fargo, and we're like, all right, we want to be like as close to the cafeteria as possible. So the dorms that we picked and Jackie's the only one that's gone, right? So she was like right across from us and picked this like dorm that was super close, but there was like no AC. We had no fans. I had like no sleep. Their horseflies are huge, like just getting eaten alive. But I would say like my favorite or my funniest story was when, you know, the kids are done for the day and you get some time to like reflect on the day as a coach, try to unwind. And I remember like we were trying to play cornhole, and I hadn't played in a long time. And Jackie and I were on a team, and she's gonna get mad at me for sharing this, but we were on a team and I was doing horribly. Like I was terrible. And she was like, you know what? Like, this isn't going to work out. We're going to be on a different team. And so later on, she was like, do you want to be on the same team? And I was like, no, absolutely not. I was like so hurt. And then the team that I was on, we ended up winning. And I was just like, in your face. So it's like the competitiveness never goes away. But there's so many amazing Fargo stories. And I look back at it like super fondly and kind of like bitter at the same time. But
first question when Jackie comes on in 40 minutes or whatever it is, I'll be like, I heard you got your ass kicked at cornhole.
After she completely annihilated me.
Sure.
And I was just like,
sorry, no interview today, sir. Click. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I'm trying to think of like which one Matt would be referring to. So I don't know if like all of them are appropriate to share, but we had our first like in a long time, our Greco All-American, Max Lee, and he is just like one of the most sincere, amazing, incredible kids. And like this poor guy, his glasses are like super thick, so he has to wrestle with that like the optional start. But it couldn't have happened to a better kid for him to like get All-American in Greco. And he was just an amazing representative of our sport. And I'm so proud of him. And he was someone like I just really got to know through like the Fargo training experience. And that was a really cool moment. And like I made it that everyone go and take like 100 photos, and they were so sick of it. But like I'm like that mom, and I was like, oh, I take photos and everything. And like I made them wear like New England themed singlets, and I don't think they were super stoked about it, but I loved it.
I'm like that as a dad, and I've got well, they're going to be 15 and 12, but yeah, it's like, Dad, come on, no more freaking pictures, man. Like you got enough. Like, didn't you get enough? So now I've got to be like detective photo bomber, right? I'm like, what are you doing, Dad? I'm playing Scrabble. No, see, it's Scrabble. Right?
Oh man. The key is give it to a little kid. Give the camera, give anything, and like just have them go create. Some of my best photos were taken by like a 7-year-old.
Oh yeah, when we go to Daniel's matches, I give the phone to his little brother, and I'm like, hey, you want something to do today? Yeah. Well, you're gonna be watching the matches anyway, right? Here, go videotape them for me. And it was so awesome that I got to do that because now I could actually watch the match live instead of like this.
Yeah.
You ever find yourself like you want to watch the match, but you find yourself watching it like this? Or it's like when you're at a football stadium and you're like at the actual game, but you keep watching it on the big screen. You're like, I should have just stayed home. All right. Hey, well, I got to run because I have your best friend on in a few minutes here, and not in a few minutes, but it's close enough to where I need to run and take a pee and do stuff like that. So world, that's where I'm going. Peace. Hey, keep kicking life's ass. I tell everybody that. Keep kicking life's ass, butt, whatever you prefer. And awesome. I can't wait till one day I can make it to Boston too and get to meet you.
Yeah, we'll go catch a Red Sox game, and I'll be
and a lobster roll.
About it. Yeah, and we'll drive to Connecticut and then loop back.
Down.
It's close enough.
Yeah, we're going over there to get something to eat.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're an honor to have on. So thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.